Welcome to this explainer. Today we're zeroing in on something you've probably walked past 100 times without a second glance. We are exploring a seemingly simple plant that is, in reality, an absolute master of ecological survival and biological engineering. We're talking about Marchantia. This tiny, ancient plant doesn't just survive, it literally conquers. It's a pioneer species packed with a bag of evolutionary tricks that's going to completely change how you look at the ground beneath your feet. So here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll start with Meet the Pioneer, then head inside the plant factory. After that, it's Attack of the Clones, followed by the Sexual Reproduction Puzzle, and finally we'll wrap up with the Circle of Life. Let's dive right in.
All right, Section 1, Meet the Pioneer.
To really understand Marchantia, we first need to know where it thrives and the ecological role it plays as this absolute vanguard of nature. Now, as a terrestrial bryophyte, it's a land plant that just loves dampness. We're talking cool, moist, shady places. You'll find it creeping over wet rocks, stream banks, and even clinging to wet brick walls. But here is the most incredible part. It is perfectly suited to colonize burnt forest soils. I mean, after a devastating fire, when the earth is basically scorched and everything else is destroyed, Marchantia rushes in as a pioneer community, laying the literal groundwork for life to return. Now, what's super interesting is that Marchantia is a plant with two very different faces. We can see this brilliant biological engineering just by comparing its top-facing part, the dorsal surface, to its bottom foundation, the ventral surface. Think of the dorsal, or top surface, almost like a biological solar panel. It's got this distinct midrib running down the middle. And if you look closely, it's divided into little diamond-shaped areas that each contain a tiny air pore. This is built perfectly for breathing and soaking up light. The ventral, or bottom surface, though, that's the gritty, aggressive foundation. It uses tiny structures called rhizoids to fiercely anchor itself to the ground and suck up water, while multicellular purple scales protect the growing tips of the plant from taking damage. It's just a flawless division of labor. Moving right along to Section 2, inside the plant factory. So we've seen the outside, now let's slice this pioneer open. As a quick refresher, the main body of the plant is called the gametophyte thallus. I know, it sounds like heavy botanical jargon, but it basically just means a plant body that's dorsiventrally flattened, so flat like a pancake, lies prostrate against the ground, and is dichotomously branched. That just means as it grows, it splits into two forks over and over again, spreading out like a green ribbon. If we take a vertical cross-section of that thallus, it seriously looks exactly like an industrial factory. Imagine taking an elevator down from the roof. Up at the very top is the epidermal zone, featuring those barrel-shaped air pores for ventilation. Ride the elevator down to the production floor, the photosynthetic zone. This is packed with air chambers filled with branching, chloroplast-rich filaments, acting like solar-powered machines manufacturing food. Finally, you hit the basement warehouse, the storage zone. It's packed with colorless cells storing starch and mucilage to keep the plant fed during tough times. Okay, Section 3, Attack of the Clones. You know, when you're rapidly conquering a burnt forest, you don't always have the luxury of time to look for a mate. Marchantia needs to multiply fast, and it does this through aggressive vegetative reproduction. The first method is straightforward fragmentation. As the plant pushes forward, the older back parts naturally die off and decay. When that decay catches up to a point where the plant had previously split, those two branches are suddenly isolated and they just keep growing as totally independent plants. But the second method? Way cooler. Gemma cups. These little crescent or cup-shaped structures sit right on top of the plant's midrib, and they are filled with little stalked, disc-like clones called gemma. And this brilliantly illustrates the plant's incredible relationship with its environment. Marchantia actually uses the weather as a tool. Falling raindrops act as a literal mechanical launch system. When a raindrop hits that tiny cup, it creates a physical splash that ejects those gemmi clones right out into the world. They land nearby and immediately start growing into brand new plants. It is quite literally a biological escape pod triggered by the rain.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Sexual Reproduction Puzzle.
Because cloning only gets you so far, right? Eventually, a species needs genetic diversity. Now, the first thing to know here is that Marchantia is dioecious, or heterothallic. This simply means a single phallus is strictly and exclusively male or strictly and exclusively female. There's no self-fertilizing here. It absolutely has to find a separate partner plant to pull off sexual reproduction.
To pull this off, they grow these highly specialized vertical stalks called gametophores. I like to think of them as alien satellite dishes broadcasting for a mate. We have the antheridiaphore on the male plant and the archegoniaphore on the female plant. When you look closely at these two bizarre structures, they are totally distinct. The male stalk grows a flat, peltate, 8-lobed disc at the top. Tucked right into cavities on its upper surface are the male sex organs, the antheridia, which are busy producing swimming sperm. The female stalk, completely different vibe. It grows the star-like umbrella with 9 downward curving rays, and hidden safely underneath this umbrella are inverted, flask-shaped archegonia, each holding one single precious egg cell. So here is the crucial, almost mind-bending puzzle piece. For fertilization to actually happen, those sperm from the male plant must physically swim to the female plant. Just think about that for a second. This is a terrestrial land plant living on the soil, yet it fundamentally requires a film of moisture or splashing rain so its sperm can swim, guided chemically, all the way to the egg hidden under that female umbrella. It's a stunning evolutionary holdover from back when plants first left the oceans. Let's pull it all together in Section 5, the Circle of Life.
We can tie all these wild biological mechanics into a single, flowing survival strategy. Marchantia exhibits what's called a heteromorphic alternation of generations. Instead of a simple life cycle, this plant utilizes a highly sophisticated strategy where it literally alternates between 2 entirely different physical bodies: the dominant green creeping thallus we've been talking about, and a completely separate diploid phase that's triggered right after fertilization.
Once that swimming sperm fertilizes the egg, phase 1 kicks off. We get a diploid zygote with paired chromosomes. In phase 2, this zygote doesn't just fall to the ground like a seed. No, it stays put, developing into an embryo deep inside the female plant. By phase 3, it grows into a mature sporophyte. But here's the catch. This new entity is completely dependent on the mother plant. It essentially grows directly inside her like a little freeloader. This dependent sporophyte functions as a 3-part biological incubator. Step 1 is the foot, which literally anchors into the mother plant's tissue to siphon off nutrients. Step 2 is the seta, a short stalk that eventually pushes outward. And step 3 is the payload itself, the capsule. This thing is packed full of spore mother cells, and they are interleaved with these stringy, moisture-sensitive structures called laters. Finally, we return to the haploid phase, where the whole cycle resets. Inside that capsule, meiosis triggers a genetic shuffle, producing haploid spores. The capsule then bursts open, and those stringolaters we just mentioned, as they dry out, they violently twist and untwist, acting like little springs that mechanically blast the tiny spores out into the wind. When those spores land in a freshly burned habitat, they germinate directly into a brand new green thallus, ready to colonize the world all over again. Which leaves us with this final thought. We've seen today how Marchantia uses factory-like internal architecture, raindrop-triggered cloning cups, and moisture-dependent chemical signaling just to survive and conquer devastating burnt forests. It really makes you wonder, if this much complex biological engineering is packed into a tiny, ancient plant we probably step on every single day, what other brilliant secrets are hidden right under our feet? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep your eyes on the ground and keep learning.